What if I told you that the key to achieving your biggest goals isn't found in one dramatic breakthrough, but in something much smaller, something so subtle that most people overlook it? Think about the last time you set a goal for yourself. Maybe it was to get in shape, start a business, or learn a new skill. You felt motivated in the beginning, but over time, that motivation faded. The goal felt too big, too overwhelming, and then, like so many others, you stopped. Here's where most people go wrong. They focus too much on the big picture and underestimate the power of small, consistent victories. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What does that mean? It means that if you're not intentionally creating progress, your mind will default to patterns that keep you stuck. But when you consciously recognize and celebrate small wins, you rewire your brain for success. You take control of your destiny instead of leaving it to chance. This isn't just a feel-good idea. Science backs it up, history proves it, and philosophy has whispered this truth for centuries. In this video, we'll explore why small wins are the secret force behind lasting transformation. We'll look at insights from psychology, ancient philosophy, and even metaphysics to understand why incremental progress is the foundation of all great achievements. You'll discover how a single tiny habit can shift your identity, how momentum builds success, and why perfectionism is the biggest enemy of growth. Along the way, we'll uncover hidden gems of wisdom from lesser-known but powerful books, insights that few people talk about, yet have the potential to change everything. By the end, you'll see success in a whole new way, and most importantly, you'll have a clear strategy for achieving it, one small win at a time. So, let's begin. The science of small wins, rewiring the brain for success. Have you ever noticed how a small achievement, like making your bed or checking something off your to-do list, gives you a little boost of energy? That's dopamine at work. Dopamine is often called the motivation molecule. It's a chemical in your brain that reinforces behavior. Every time you experience a small success, dopamine is released, making you feel good and encouraging you to keep going. This is why small wins matter. When you celebrate even minor progress, your brain begins associating effort with reward. This creates a loop. Small success leads to motivation, which leads to more effort, which leads to more success. Over time, this compounds into something extraordinary. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, calls this the power of marginal gains. He explains that improving by just 1% each day doesn't seem like much in the moment, but over time, those tiny improvements add up to massive transformation. The Bhagavad Gita offers a profound perspective on this as well. It teaches the concept of karma yoga, the idea that we should focus on our actions rather than being attached to results. When we commit to small, consistent efforts without obsessing over immediate outcomes, we naturally cultivate mastery. But there's something even more fascinating: neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change and adapt based on experience. When you repeatedly engage in small wins, you're literally rewiring your brain to become someone who succeeds. In their book, The Progress Principle, Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer reveal how even tiny accomplishments create momentum. They studied workplaces and found that people who experienced small daily wins were significantly more engaged, productive, and motivated. So, what does this mean for you? It means you don't need to wait for some massive breakthrough. You just need to focus on the next step, the next small win. What's one thing you can accomplish today, no matter how small? the role of small wins in ancient philosophy. Throughout history, some of the greatest thinkers have understood that success is not a single event, it's a process. Aristotle believed that a good life, or eudaimonia, isn't achieved through one grand gesture, but through consistent virtuous action. He argued that excellence is a habit, not a singular achievement. Confucius took this idea further, teaching that self-discipline and small daily improvements create strong character. His philosophy wasn't about overnight success. It was about becoming a person of integrity through steady progress. The Japanese concept of Kaizen aligns perfectly with this wisdom. Kaizen means continuous improvement. It's the idea that small, incremental changes lead to major transformations over time. This principle has been used by world-class organizations, but it's just as powerful in personal growth. Jeff Olson, in The Slight Edge, describes this process beautifully. He explains that successful people do the small, seemingly insignificant things that unsuccessful people ignore. Over time, these small choices create a compounding effect that leads to massive success. So, the real question is, are you willing to commit to small, daily improvements? Overcoming the perfectionism trap. Why progress matters more than perfection. If small wins are so powerful, why don't more people embrace them? Because of perfectionism. Perfectionism is the voice in your head that says, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. It convinces you that unless you can achieve a goal in a flawless, impressive way, it's not worth pursuing. But here's the truth. Perfectionism is just another form of procrastination. It keeps you stuck. Søren Kierkegaard introduced the idea of the leap of faith, the notion that we must take action even when we're uncertain. Growth comes not from waiting until things are perfect, but from taking small, imperfect steps forward. Buddhism also offers a valuable lesson here. It teaches the principle of impermanence. Everything is always changing, and there is no perfect moment. The only thing that matters is progress. Brené Brown, in The Gifts of Imperfection, explains that true success comes from embracing vulnerability and letting go of the need to be perfect. When you focus on small daily progress, instead of waiting for ideal conditions, you free yourself to actually move forward. So, what's something you've been putting off because you're waiting for the right moment? What if you just started imperfectly? Each part of this journey builds upon the last. Small wins are more than just strategies. They are a mindset, a way of life. And as we continue, you'll discover how they shape your identity, create unstoppable momentum, and ultimately lead to profound transformation. What's one small win you can create today? Because that single action might be the very thing that changes everything. Small wins and the psychological power of identity shifts. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Most people believe that identity is fixed. I'm just not a disciplined person, or I've never been good at sticking to habits. But what if that's not true? What if identity isn't something you have, but something you build, one small win at a time? Psychologists have found that identity is shaped through behavior, not the other way around. You don't need to feel like a writer to start writing. You don't need to feel like a fit person to take a walk. You just need to do the action, and over time, those actions shift your self-concept. This is where the self-fulfilling prophecy comes in, a concept from social psychology that explains how our beliefs shape our reality. If you believe you are someone who follows through on commitments, you'll take actions that reinforce that belief. But if you see yourself as someone who always quits, you'll subconsciously act in ways that confirm that identity. Krishnamurti once said, "The highest form of intelligence is the ability to observe without judgment." Instead of criticizing yourself for past failures, what if you simply observed your patterns and started making tiny, consistent changes? Robert Cialdini, in The Psychology of Persuasion, highlights how consistency is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Once you take a small action in a certain direction, your mind seeks to stay consistent with it. That's why small wins matter. They aren't just about progress, they're about reinforcing an identity of success. So, if you want to change your life, don't wait for a big transformation. Start by proving to yourself, through small, undeniable wins, that you are becoming the person you aspire to be. The relationship between small wins and the law of momentum. Have you ever noticed how once you start something, it's easier to keep going? That's not a coincidence, it's physics. Newton's first law states that an object in motion stays in motion, and the same applies to human behavior. The hardest part of any goal is getting started, but once you build momentum, everything gets easier. This is why small wins are so powerful. They get the ball rolling. The moment you take action, even if it's tiny, you shift from a state of inaction to movement. That shift is everything. Zen Buddhism teaches a similar principle through one breath at a time. The idea that the only way to create lasting change is to focus on the present moment. Instead of worrying about how far you have to go, you simply focus on taking the next breath, the next step, the next action. Behavioral science calls this habit stacking, a technique that involves linking a new habit to an existing one. When you connect a small win to something you already do, it becomes automatic. This is why Admiral William McRaven, in Make Your Bed, argues that starting the day with a simple success, like making your bed, sets the tone for a day of discipline and achievement. So, if you want to create momentum in your life, start small. The energy from one small win will naturally pull you into the next one. What's one action you can take right now that will shift you from stillness to motion? Transforming setbacks into stepping stones. Small wins aren't just about success. They're about resilience. The truth is, no matter how many good habits you build, setbacks will happen. You'll have days where you fail, lose motivation, or feel like giving up. But here's what separates successful people from everyone else. They see failures as stepping stones, not stop signs. Nassim Taleb introduces the concept of anti-fragility, the idea that stress and failure don't just make us resilient, they make us stronger. Every time you face a setback but choose to keep going, you're not just recovering, you're growing beyond what you were before. Marcus Aurelius, in his Stoic writings, reminds us, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, obstacles aren't distractions from your path. They are the path. This perspective is echoed in ancient shamanic traditions, which teach that suffering isn't something to be avoided, it's a teacher. Every challenge holds wisdom if we're willing to see it. John C. Maxwell, in Failing Forward, explains that failure is never final. The only real failure is giving up. Those who succeed aren't those who never fall. They're the ones who get back up every single time. So, instead of fearing setbacks, embrace them. See them as proof that you are in the game, that you are growing, that you are pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. What if the thing you see as your biggest obstacle right now is actually the key to your next breakthrough? How small wins impact your spiritual growth. Success isn't just about achievement, it's about inner transformation. Taoism teaches the principle of Wu Wei, or effortless action. It's the idea that real progress isn't about force, it's about alignment. When you focus on small, natural improvements rather than obsessing over outcomes, you enter a state of flow where success feels almost effortless. Ram Dass famously said, "Be here now." The past is gone, the future isn't here yet. The only place where change happens is in the present moment. And the best way to shape the future is by focusing on the small, intentional actions you take today. This concept is reflected in the subconscious mind. Every small spiritual practice, whether it's gratitude, mindfulness, or a simple act of kindness, rewires your inner world. Anthony DeMello, in Awareness, The Perils and Opportunities of Reality, explains that true transformation happens not through grand enlightenment moments, but through small, everyday shifts in perception.
So, what small spiritual practice can you integrate into your daily life? Because in the end, spirituality isn't about massive awakenings. It's about how you live each moment.
Small wins in the context of social and collective progress. It's easy to think that small actions only affect our personal lives, but history tells us otherwise. Ubuntu, an African philosophy, teaches that I am because we are. Every small act of kindness, every positive choice, every contribution, no matter how tiny, ripples outward. Malcolm Gladwell, in The Tipping Point, explains how small, seemingly insignificant actions can trigger massive societal shifts. Most major movements didn't start with grand gestures. They started with a handful of people making small, consistent efforts that eventually reached a critical mass. Deepak Chopra speaks of collective consciousness, the idea that the energy and actions of individuals influence the whole. When enough people embrace small wins, they create large-scale transformation. Rosamund and Benjamin Zander, in The Art of Possibility, highlight how even a single shift in mindset can open doors to new possibilities, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. So, what small action can you take today that might, in ways you can't yet see, contribute to something much bigger? Each small win is a seed. It might not look like much at first, but over time, it grows into something life-changing. As we continue, we'll explore how celebrating progress rewires your brain, how tiny habits create unstoppable momentum, and how small wins, over time, become the foundation of an extraordinary life. But for now, here's a question to think about. What's one small action you can take today that will move you forward, no matter how tiny it seems? The power of celebrating small wins, the neurobiology of gratitude.
Have you ever noticed how good it feels to check something off a to-do list? Even if it's something as simple as drinking a glass of water in the morning, there's a small sense of accomplishment. But why does that happen? Why does something so minor give us a psychological boost? The answer lies in dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When we recognize progress, no matter how small, our brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior and making us want to continue. But here's where most people go wrong. They wait for big victories before they allow themselves to feel successful.
This is a dangerous trap. When you only celebrate major milestones, you train your brain to associate success with rare, distant events rather than daily progress. This leads to frustration, burnout, and ultimately, giving up. The key to sustainable success is shifting your focus from results to progress. Sean Achor, in The Happiness Advantage, explains that happiness doesn't come after success. It's what fuels success. When you recognize small wins, you don't just feel better. You reprogram your brain to stay motivated. Ancient spiritual traditions have understood this for centuries. Sufi mystics emphasize gratitude as a pathway to divine connection. In their teachings, recognizing even the smallest blessings shifts one's perspective from scarcity to abundance. Buddhist philosophy highlights mindfulness, the art of being fully present and appreciating each moment. The act of acknowledging small victories aligns perfectly with this practice. But what if celebrating small wins wasn't just about motivation? What if it actually changed your biology? Research in epigenetics suggests that our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors influence gene expression. When we consistently recognize and appreciate progress, we activate genetic pathways linked to resilience, optimism, and long-term well-being. A simple practice to rewire your brain is keeping a small wins journal. Every night, write down 3 things you accomplished that day, no matter how minor. Over time, this habit will shift your mind's focus from what's missing to what's working. And here's the paradox. The more you celebrate small wins, the more wins you create. How to develop a system for small wins in daily life. The biggest mistake people make when trying to improve their lives is relying on motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Some days you'll feel unstoppable. Other days you'll struggle to get out of bed. The key to consistent success isn't willpower, it's systems. B.J. Fogg in Tiny Habits explains that lasting change comes from making habits so small that failure becomes impossible. When a new habit is tiny enough, there's no resistance, and over time, these small actions naturally grow into something significant. For example, instead of committing to a 30-minute workout, start with 1 push-up. Instead of writing 10 pages a day, commit to 1 sentence. Instead of meditating for 20 minutes, begin with 1 deep breath. Why does this work? Because it bypasses the brain's natural resistance to change. When something feels too big, we hesitate, but when it feels effortless, we do it automatically. Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants method provides another perspective on making small wins part of daily life. He explains that people often waste time reacting to urgent but unimportant tasks, instead of focusing on small, strategic actions that create long-term success. Prioritizing small, high-impact behaviors daily leads to exponential progress. Even spiritual traditions emphasize tiny, consistent actions over grand gestures. Buddhist meditation teaches that even a single moment of compassion can expand into a lifelong practice. Karma yoga in Hinduism states that dedicating small daily actions to a higher purpose leads to mastery. So, the key to lasting success isn't taking massive leaps. It's designing your environment and habits in a way that makes small wins effortless and automatic. What's 1 small habit you can commit to today? Small wins and the path to self-actualization. What does it mean to truly reach your potential? Most people imagine self-actualization as a sudden realization or enlightenment, but in reality, it's built through small, consistent growth. Maslow's hierarchy of needs places self-actualization at the top, a state where one fully expresses their potential. But here's what most people overlook. You don't reach self-actualization in one giant step. You climb it through small wins. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey follows the same principle. Every great story, whether it's mythology, religion, or personal success, follows a pattern of gradual transformation. The hero doesn't become great overnight. They take 1 step at a time, overcoming small challenges that prepare them for greater ones. This mirrors the wisdom found in Kriya Yoga, taught by Paramahansa Yogananda. The spiritual path isn't about sudden enlightenment. It's about daily incremental shifts in energy and awareness. Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, explains that transformation happens in the present moment. The best way to shape your future isn't through grand resolutions, it's by making better choices right now. So, if you want to become the best version of yourself, stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start by winning this moment. What is one thing you can do right now that moves you forward? The secret of lifelong momentum. How small wins become a legacy. The world often celebrates big wins, but history is built on small, consistent contributions. Noam Chomsky didn't reshape intellectual thought in one day. It was decades of incremental work. Mahatma Gandhi didn't change the world through a single act. It was a lifetime of small, deliberate choices. Even Einstein's breakthroughs weren't sudden. They were the result of years of tiny insights stacking up. This is the essence of fractal growth theory, the idea that small patterns, when repeated, create massive structures. Nature itself follows this principle. Trees grow ring by ring. Rivers carve landscapes through tiny, consistent movements. Mountains are shaped by millions of years of micro-changes. Your life works the same way. Darren Hardy, in The Compound Effect, explains that small daily choices create our destiny. What we do every day matters infinitely more than what we do once in a while. Gandhi once said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." This is the final stage of small wins, not just personal success, but impact. When we apply small wins beyond ourselves, we create a legacy. So the question isn't just, what small win can I achieve today? It's also, how can my small wins contribute to something greater than myself? The power of one step at a time. At this point, one truth should be crystal clear. Success isn't something you wait for. It's something you create, one small win at a time. Most people believe transformation requires big actions, but every great achievement, every remarkable success, every extraordinary life is built on tiny, consistent steps. So, ask yourself, what is one small action you can take today toward your goal? What is one small win you can create right now? Because that one step might seem insignificant today, but over time, it might just change everything. Swami Vivekananda once said, "Take up one idea, make that one idea your life." Let that idea be this: small wins create extraordinary lives. And now the choice is yours.